Welcome into Vandy on SI. I'm Joey Dwyer here with the man, the myth, the legend, Dylan Tovitz, our new intern who I don't really feel like is an intern. I feel like he's above that title, but that's what he announced it as on Twitter, so we're going to give it to him for now until something changes. Dylan, he got to school a couple days ago. First day at fall camp today. Feels different than it did last year. I know you weren't at camp last year, but tell me the general feel you've had around Vanderbilt football throughout the fall so far.
Yeah. First off, thank you for having me and thank you for the introduction. Very excited to be here. And yeah, I mean, there is certainly a real different feel going on around Vanderbilt camp. I mean, I could sense it just being there today. The belief in this program, and you heard it from the media day the other day from the coaches and the players. Like, I think every team will tell you that there's a belief in their program.
They said it every year for the last 10 years.
But this is the first time where, like, it feels like there's been a genuine internal, like, switch. It's almost like a switch went off last year, and then beat Bama when they, made the bowl game. And there's just an added intensity, added professionalism, it feels like, going on. You see it during reps. You see it in between reps. I noticed today, like, it's just like the coaches are on everything a lot more than, like, I ever would have imagined. And it's
right.
Like, you can tell this team has high aspirations and big hopes going forward.
Yeah, and I think there's buy-in now, and there's buy-in 2 years ago when things went crazy at the end of the year and it all fell apart. But you're right, it does feel different at this stage. I think generally you just look at how they're talking. Richie Hoskins, even a guy who generally has not been a big talker over the years, talks to us on Monday and says, "We've got a national championship to win." Things like that haven't happened in this program's past, and I think that's something that I've noticed and something that I think we'll continue to notice throughout the year. Now that brings on an added pressure, but Diego Pavia talked to us earlier, and I think it was SEC Media Days, and told us that he likes that pressure, he buys into that, and Clark Lee's kind of held it over their heads. But Dylan, I guess last day of fall camp, really not a ton from practice to take today. They did go live a bit, but I think we've learned what we're going to learn. We should talk position by position, though, and I think we're going to do that pretty quickly for each position. But go to the quarterback room. I'll start it off, and you can kind of fill in what you've seen and heard. And obviously, Pavia is going to be the one, despite him saying he's in a quarterback competition. I've joked with Dylan, he needs to ask about the quarterback competition on his first day.
Always.
The two, I would guess at this stage, is going to be Berlowitz. I've kind of felt that way from the beginning of camp, and just kind of seeing how all the reps are distributed and seeing just the confidence he walks around with. They put him in front of the media, not Dickey. Dickey, I think, is pretty clearly the three. I thought that was kind of up for grabs going into the fall, but don't see it anymore. And then beyond that, I don't think they're going to get to, but it'll be maybe Jack Elliott, maybe St. Hilaire. I think Muschamp really trended up towards the end of camp. Dylan, thoughts on maybe the battles towards the back of the quarterback room more than Pavia, because I think we're going to talk Pavia to death throughout the year.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I think Pavia, he's been off to the side a little bit more than he has been in camp so far. And he seems to have added poise this year. Like, I think we've seen a lot in the public eye for sure about, like, he's talking a lot and has a lot of energy, but I think internally, and we saw this a little bit the other day, like, he has a lot, he feels a lot older and more mature than he's felt in the past couple years. So I'm excited to see, like, he knows what he's doing. But after that, I'd agree, Blaze has been pretty impressive, Berlowitz, and I also think Drew Dickey did a nice job. I think after that, there's definitely a drop-off. I've liked what I've seen from Muschamp in his short time. It's kind of, hard to evaluate. But, Dickey, I actually have been pretty impressed with. I would love to see him get some time at some point, just like as like a little incentive, like a reward for, sticking with the program. He's polished. Like, he's solid as a third-string guy. Hopefully they won't be in a situation where they actually need to use him. But I think he's been pretty good. And Berlowitz has come a long way in the past, even just a few months. And obviously the questions start to ask themselves about next season. Like, is he going to be the guy, obviously, when Pavia moves on? So we'll see. But I think he is learning so much working under Pavia, and honestly just, like, getting those reps in practice, and maybe he'll get some game reps at some point this year. So I think the future is bright for him, and I think the quarterback room is deep, and again, hopefully they won't have to use that much of that depth in real game situation, but it's there if they need it, for sure.
For sure. I think it's more of a storyline than it even was last year, obviously. Clark Lee hadn't had a quarterback play the full season throughout any of his years as Vanderbilt's head coach before last year. What are the odds that that's going to happen again? I'm not sure. Pavi obviously plays a pretty physical style of football, and it's a lot different than what Vanderbilt's had at quarterback in the past. I think the thing with Berlowitz that I look at is like, are they comfortable enough with his up and downness that they're going to be able to put him out there and be able to win a game with him? I don't know the answer to that at this point. I think early in camp he looked really good. I thought it was eradicated a little bit. You heard about all the steps he had taken since the spring, going from the 4 to the 2. I still think there's some questions. Drew Dickey, I thought, had some rough stretches of camp, but obviously I think is more fit for the third string role than Elliott or Muschamp or St. Hilaire. That's kind of where I stand on that. I think it's really hard to beat out a guy with that much experience for a third string role, especially one that's been that loyal to this program. So Dickey, I think, is the 3. Move on to running backs. Talked to Gabe Fields today. I think pretty chalk here. Cedric Alexander is going to be the 1. I would say McKylen Young's probably going to be the 2. MK Young, we'll have a feature on him on the site tomorrow, so be looking out for that. Newberry was pretty limited all camp, so hard to get a feel, but obviously his pass catching is going to play. I think he'll be the 3rd string, but probably closer to McKylen Young than he is to Gabe Fields as the 4th string. Chase Gillespie, I don't know if he practiced at all during the fall, and if you have anything to add there, go ahead, but I think it's pretty chalk at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, I would agree, pretty chalk. I don't think there's that much to go over in terms of position battles, but I mean, I think I'm excited to see kind of what Cedric Alexander does this year, see if he kind of takes another leap. I mean, we were just talking about him before. Like, he's maybe not, a game wrecker, someone who's going to make a crazy, game-changing play, but he's solid. He protects the ball, and I think he's kind of exactly what this offense needs, and he's just another leader there. And then you have the guys behind him, MK Young and AJ Newberry, who kind of bring other aspects. Young is really, fast and shifty, and I think he will certainly have a role in this offense, and obviously Newberry had a pretty big impact when he was healthy last year, especially in the pass-catching game. So I think that it's actually a pretty solid and deep running back room. I don't think we see much of Gabe Fields this year at all, and same with Chase Gillespie, who you mentioned. But yeah, I think it's definitely a solid room, and I think Pavia, and he talked about this, and he has a lot of trust built with Alexander, Cedric, so I think especially in the receiving game, they both talked about that actually, or have talked about that, that he feels like Cedric Alexander feels like another receiver at points. So I think we see even more of that this year, kind of using him down the field, like wheel routes out of the backfield, that kind of stuff. I think Cedric has the chance to take a pretty big leap, and the guys behind him will follow suit.
Sure. The last thing on the running back room, we got more important ones to get to, but I also look at Cedric Alexander's freshman year. He came in as the 3rd string, and Chase Gillespie was, I think, 2nd on the depth chart at that point. That room has come a long way since those days. So obviously they could have added in the portal. I think they would have benefited from doing so, but they did get MK Young, and I do think they're better there as a whole. Also, I came into camp thinking receiver was maybe their biggest area of weakness. I don't know that I feel quite that way anymore. I still don't think it's going to be near the top of the roster in terms of the position groups, but I think Junior Sherrill's taken a step. Obviously, Trey Richardson's going to play a lot. He's going to give him a lot with his speed, his end-around ability. Richie Hoskins is going to play. Trent Hudson hasn't been healthy throughout a lot of camp, but I think he'll play a lot as well and give him something in the red zone. We'll see about Martell Height. I think he's going to play a decent bit there, but it's going to vary game by game. And then Trista Brown, I think, is the last guy on my depth chart who I would have playing consistently. LeBron Hill, the freshman, I thought did some good things, really looks the part. Caleb Barnett's super fast. I don't know that he's bigger than Dylan, but he can fly. So I think that certainly lends itself to maybe him getting some packages once in a while. But to me, it looks like there's 6 with Sherrill, Hudson, Height, Richardson, Brown, and Hoskins. Yep. And then to me, it's kind of a drop-off after that. I don't know how you feel.
No, I agree. I mean, I actually agree that I was impressed a lot by the receiver room today and also this far in camp. Agreed, it was a point of, skepticism going in, but I was really impressed with Trent Hudson today. He hasn't played that much, to your point, but I think today we saw him flash. Tim Beck talked about him on the other day, about really how he kind of brings that vertical aspect to the offense, and especially in the red zone. I think he had 10 touchdowns for Pavia in New Mexico State 2 years ago. He's a big body, and I think he will certainly bring an element to this offense, and I think he's going to end up cementing himself as that wide receiver too. I think we see Trey Richardson in the slot a good bit, kind of in those unique packages. They'll use him in those like formations with the triple options and stuff like that. They'll find roles for him as kind of just more of a unique player and use him in different ways. And yeah, I think the back of the room is strong. I mean, Richie Hoskins is solid, and he's really evolved as a leader both on and off the field. I mean, you could hear it based on the way he spoke the other day. Really, he'll obviously play in the slot as well. He's just a really good third down guy, making the catch and in great hands. He doesn't drop the ball, and he's good. And then the other guys, I mean, I think we could see a lot from them. I think there's a lot to like about the receiver room, and it's deeper than I thought it was. Of course, and once you get to that back end, I don't think they want to be having to use a guy like Caleb Barnett that much. But he's incredibly fast, as you mentioned, and yeah. But it's an exciting room, and I'm a little skeptical about Martell Height playing on the offensive end. I think he's going to do it. Obviously, he's been sidelined for most of practice, but when he's been in, he's been on offense. You mentioned he's a complete game changer, best guy on the field type of stuff. I think we're going to get to the cornerbacks. I think the cornerbacks are where I'm more skeptical than the receiver room, so I'm worried that him playing receiver will limit his ability as a cornerback, which I really don't think the defense can afford. Right. But if he's healthy and if he wants to do it and he has the capability to do it, I think he'll certainly have an impact in the receiver room as well. So yeah, there's a lot to like.
Yeah, for sure. I think we could almost do a whole show on Martell Height. We'll keep it quick here, but I do think that a lot of his availability on offense is going to depend on what they do defensively, and whether those pieces fit well enough for him to take some downs off. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think any of us do at this point. I mean, what happens if somebody goes down in the quarterback room? I think
exactly.
Obviously they have better depth than they've had, but I still don't know that it's necessarily enough to get away with playing Height 30 snaps at receiver.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is Height is their cornerback one, and then clear cornerback one, and if you have to put somebody else, in that spot to guard,
it'll be at corner.
Right, and if you're gonna he's the only one I think they're comfortable with, guarding a guy like Ryan Williams, guarding these top SEC receivers. If he goes down, which obviously we hope he doesn't, and that would be really bad for the team. But if he goes down, then it's who kind of can step up there, and if they think there's a chance that playing him a lot at receiver is going to increase that chance of injury and also just fatigue and all that stuff as the season goes on, I'm a little skeptical about it, but I think he can do it, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think we will see, and it might not even be Charleston Southern. Yeah. I think it might be Virginia Tech or South Carolina. They might save him for some of those, especially once he's more healthy. Tight end room, Dylan, I mean, we didn't see but anything from the tight end room. Eli Stowers is out most of camp. I think they said he's probably going to ramp up Charleston Southern week. I think they'll still be pretty cautious with him Charleston Southern week. Cole Spence looks good to go after his quad injury. I don't know that it was ever particularly serious, but
he looked good today.
Yeah, Clark Lee mentioned that they were going to be careful with him, and they already kind of knew what they had. And like you said, looked good as a pass catcher today. I wonder if that's something that you see more from him throughout the year. I think the indication is certainly that that's going to be a thing. Bryson Coleman, I think, is the 3, and then Emmanuel Adebayo will back up Spence as more of a blocker. Really an uneventful camp for the tight end room, and we'll make it quick. I think that was a good thing for the tight end room, that it was uneventful. It meant no significant injury to Eli Stowers, no significant injury to Cole Spence, obviously not a ton of Bryson Coleman, which I think Vanderbilt fans would have liked to have seen. He had a great camp last year, but really quiet, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Not much more there. I mean, Stowers is obviously exciting, but we'll see. I think he'll be ready for week 1. We'll probably see him, my guess, is in limited action week 1, not because he's injured, but because they're not going to overwork him against Charleston Southern as he continues to ramp up. But yeah, tight end room, I think, will complement the receiver room and create a pretty nice pass catching group for Pavia.
Sure. And here's where it gets interesting on offense too. All we had heard about all offseason is how much they invested in the offensive line. Obviously, they look better on paper there. I think they are better. Pre-snap penalties were a thing that I think they've kind of eradicated at this point in camp. Here's my starting 5, and obviously it's hard to tell this from one practice, but I think Jordan White's going to be the center. The guards, I'm going to go with Chase Mitchell, who I think is all but cemented. And then Cade McConnell, I think, will end up winning this competition with Sterling Porsche. I think Porsche still going to play, probably the sixth guy, but I think McConnell came into the fall probably with the job to lose and maybe has it to this point. And then on the outside, Isaiah Glass and Bryce Henderson as well. So I think the 5 is clear-cut outside of McConnell versus Porsche. I would go McConnell at this stage, but who knows. Where I'm concerned is the Saturday scrimmage showed us that the offensive line depth, yikes. Like they could have a really hard time, say, maybe not necessarily Jordan White, because I think Cade McConnell can slide in at backup center, but there's a lot of guys to where if you miss 2 or 3 offensive linemen for a week, uh-oh.
Yeah, I think Jordan White's going to be really important for this offense, and he's, everything that I've heard, he's really kind of, emerged as a leader for the team on the offensive side. And I think besides that, there's a lot of new faces, so I think seeing the line kind of develop that chemistry with the rest of the offense and with Diego is going to be huge. But yeah, I would agree. I think I'm confident and happy with the starting 5 going in, but if and when they run into some injury issues, it's going to get really thin really quick, as you mentioned. So definitely some worries there, especially when you get to the depth. But I think the starting 5 is solid, and I think they've performed pretty well in camp to give us that kind of confidence.
For sure. And then also, I do think on defense they have better depth than they've had. Obviously, I look at Zaylen Wood. We were talking about him a lot last offseason.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't think he's gotten worse, but we talk about him a lot less because they have more options around. Issa Waznaha and Glenn Seabrooks are going to play a lot. Wood's going to play a lot as kind of a Swiss Army knife. Sometimes he'll be on the edge, sometimes he'll be inside. Look at all the transfers, Mason Nelson and Joshua Singh. They have a lot more than they've had there, and I think that's really going to help them down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this to me, I think, the other day, but the big change, they didn't get any crazy big names on the defensive line, interior defensive line in the portal, but they have a lot more depth there than they've had in a long time. Just a lot more bodies they could put in, and that works for a couple of reasons. The first is it's a long schedule, it's a long season, guys are going to get hurt, you need other ones to step up, and I think they have at least people that they are confident rotating in and confident playing that they can throw in now. The other thing is like the wear and tear aspect. The coaches have said it all kind of fall that they felt that they ran out of gas at a certain point last season. And if you look at them playing, I think Richie Hoskins said this, but he said if you look at them playing week 3 versus playing week 9, like they're just a totally different team in terms of just like stamina and fatigue and staying healthy and so I think having those bodies that they can rotate in, especially on the interior defensive line in the beginning of the season, is going to pay dividends in the long term for a guy like Glenn Seabrooks, Linus Song.
Yeah, and Linus Song had a great scrimmage Saturday. We failed to mention that as well. Go check out our scrimmage recap from Saturday on the channel. Graham and I did that as well. I look at the edge, too, as a place where you don't see a ton of improvement on the surface, but they are deeper. I think Mason Carter got a lot better throughout the offseason. Keanu Koo being a backup, I think, is a big deal for them. Obviously, Capers and Sidner are going to start. I thought both of them had really good camps when they were on the field. But, again, the depth has improved there, too. The depth, though, in the linebacker room. Dylan, I think you asked Bryce Cowan about it today. I think it's an anomaly that Nick Lazinski was able to keep that room together, where you have a guy like Prince Colley, who's a former dang near 5-star recruit. He's like the 5th or 6th guy on that depth chart. Jamison Curtis really stood out in bowl prep. He decided to stay as probably the 6th guy.
Yeah.
Man, that room is deep. And I don't know if they don't have a star there. They've got Patterson and Longwell, who I think are both solid players. I think they're hoping Patterson can get back to the healthy version of himself from a few years back. But Dylan, I think you feel pretty good about what they've got there, especially feels like Cowan has made a leap, even if he says he didn't feel like he had a good camp.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think the linebacker room is the strongest, or at least the deepest room they have on both sides of the ball. Like, I'm really excited for what they kind of bring in the middle of the defense. You mentioned, I think Patterson and Longwell, like, they're both, like, really solid, like, Mike linebackers, led to 1 and 2 in tackles for the team last year, I believe. And there's just so much depth behind them. I really like what I've seen from Bryce Cowan, although, as you mentioned, he said he put on, I think, 15 pounds of weight, like, had a little bit of issue with feeling quick at the beginning of camp, but he's sorting it out, and I think he's just big and athletic, and you have him, and you have Nick Rinaldi, who I think will have a big impact. Obviously,
how did I forget Nick Rinaldi?
Yeah, we've seen him.
Yeah, this is why we need you.
Yeah, there you go.
You don't forget this type of stuff I see.
Ronaldo's an interesting one because I actually think he's going to play a lot off the edge. And Cowan actually mentioned today that he's been playing himself at edge a decent bit. But I think Ronaldo's really he has a diverse skill set, and he could certainly play off the ball, but I think we'll see him kind of in those, passing downs, third down packages as a pass rusher. I think he led the team in sacks last year with 6, so I think he'll have a big impact. You mentioned Prince Collie. I think Jameson Curtis could have an impact. Now he redshirted last year, so he's a redshirt freshman and a redshirt sophomore. And I'm really excited for the linebacker room. They have a lot of depth, and Cowan again mentioned today that just like with the defensive line, they trust the guys behind them a lot more than they have. They have a lot more depth, so I think we're going to see guys like Patterson and Cowan, who have been banged up at points, be fresher deeper into the season, which is huge.
Sure. See, this is why I keep you around. Like, if I forget Nick Rinaldi, I need a young mind.
I'll remind you on Nick Rinaldi. See, I can do that.
That's when I'm getting too old. Is when I forget the guy who led the freaking team in sacks. Like, what are we doing, Joey? So we'll go to corners now. Again, a lot of names there. Jamal Richardson talked to us today. I think they're a lot deeper there. And they were obviously they were very unfortunate with last year, Marlon Jones, his cancer diagnosis, Mark Davis, obviously the Achilles injury that Jamal Richardson said he was out to lunch and raced back to the facility. I'm glad he didn't get a ticket on the way back. But having them two paired with Jalen Lackey, Martel Height, and Colby Taylor, I think is a big deal for them. He said Colby Taylor has matured as well, a night and day difference in him personally, which I think helps them. Obviously, Vanderbilt hopes that translates to less penalties, I'm sure. But Dylan, I think they're going to be better there. Can they play enough man? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they're definitely deeper. I think outside of height, it's a question of kind of who else is going to step up. But I think we're going to see them in a lot of packages. I think Coach Gregory, is going to – he has a lot of the same style as Clark Lee does, which I think was kind of the takeaway from that. But I think we're going to see a lot of different kind of formations. And, he mentioned today Jalen Lackey I'm really excited for because I think he had the unique experience of, playing a lot as a freshman in the SEC. And obviously there were ups and downs, but I think he now has that experience as a sophomore. And in terms of pure, raw skill, I think he's up there with anyone. Coach Richardson said today that he thinks Jalen Lackey's his best man corner. So I think we'll see him in those kind of man situations. And if not, there's a lot of really, smart guys in that room. So I think someone will step up and I think they'll be just fine. It's definitely not the room I'm most confident in going in, just in terms of kind of guarding SEC receivers outside of height, but even including height in terms of guarding these really, really top tier wide receivers. But I think that they have enough guys there to do the job for sure.
Sure, and it honestly was pretty difficult for me to narrow this down, but I think height's going to be obviously the one. And then I think alongside him, if I had to bet right now, I'd go Marlon Jones. I think Marlon Jones, really impressive camp.
He's had a good camp for sure.
Just an amazing story that he was able to do that.
Yeah.
The safety room, again, another tough one to predict. And kind of the last one we'll talk about, Brock Taylor and Mason Rowe-Miller. First, I think if I had to guess, probably be C.J. Hurd, Marlon Sewell. Hurd,
agreed,
highly compensated transfer. He didn't come here to be a backup. Sewell obviously came back and had to fight for everything, but I think they're going to defer to his experience. But actually writing a story about this right now, they think they're more athletic, they're longer, and honestly they could be better because of Dante Carter and Carson Lawrence, 2 top 20 guys in program history in terms of recruiting.
Yeah.
That's a big deal for them, and the fact that those guys don't have to play, I think, is a sign of growth as well.
Yeah, I think Hurd and Sewell are going to bring a lot of experience and kind of really just good, solid play. We're going to see, Clark Lee mentioned this, but we're going to see, I think, maybe focusing on less completely blown coverages. Like you think of that play in the Virginia Tech game.
How many times can we talk about that play
completely?
From Virginia? Presser.
Every presser, because I keep watching it on. It's at least they won the game. So
it's just every presser we in some way hear about that Virginia Tech. I wonder how many times Dante Carter has heard about it.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see a lot less of that this year. I think Hurd is solid. I think Sewell is solid. They're guys that aren't going to, go super up and down. I think Billy mentioned that today. But I think behind them.
Something Billy said?
Yeah, he was talking about it. I caught my ear.
Don't listen to that guy.
But I think, I think behind him, Dante Carter and as you mentioned, really has a lot of, athleticism and same with Lawrence. So I think I think it's a pretty solid room at the back end, the secondary as well.
For sure. And also, that's not to say Dante Carter's not going to play. Even if he's not starting, I think he's going to play.
Definitely.
Almost it feels like to me they're going to use him as the safety version of a swing tackle where he could slot in anywhere.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, you like it? I don't know that he
Safety
can come
version of a
down
swing tackle.
and hit as much as a CJ Hurd can, but I think he's really fast, really athletic.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a terrible tackler by any means, so I would guess that he'll play a lot as well. Carson Lawrence obviously can really hit, has all the physical tools. Not exactly sure what the role looks like right away, but again, I think as we look at this, and we'll wrap it up here, they look to be improved in a lot of spots, and that, we don't know if that's going to translate into wins necessarily. A lot of times in the SEC, it doesn't necessarily do that. You don't really just have your one-year window, and you got to rework the whole thing, but they've got a lot back, and I think they're deeper and probably improved as a whole, and that's probably what you want to hear this time of year, and I think you just figure out the rest later, and it's kind of hard to predict all that right now.
Yeah, they're in about as good position as you can hope they would be going into, week one. And we're going to talk about it more, but I think there's a lot of things to be excited for. And a lot of it, there's always, again, we talked about this, but there's always smoke going on at this time of year where everyone's like, yeah, this is the year. There's genuine change. Like, they had a really good camp, but I honestly think they did. And I think we're going to see it translate a little more than we have because this is, real change that's starting to occur.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the story of camp for sure. They're deeper, but more so they have more belief. That's the story to me, and I think that's what you got to take away from today, and that doesn't necessarily translate to them going to Tuscaloosa and winning this year or beating Auburn when they come into town again, but I think you like what you hear at this stage of camp. I think we expected it to be this way, but for it to be this way, also they're starting to get healthier. That's a big deal. I'm more excited about having Dylan Tobitz around, though. I think it's going to be a really strong addition to Vandy on SI, so be sure to visit the site, subscribe if you haven't. We want to make this quick, but we could have done this for a lot longer and gone player by player, but we got to eat lunch. Dylan's got to get to class, so we'll talk soon. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. Peace.